Hello, and welcome to our final installment of this human design training. So if you haven't caught the other two trainings, or you're like, I didn't even know this was a thing because this has landed in your inbox and you're on the list, head over to, I'll put the links actually below, that'll make it easy. I'll put the links for training number 1, training number 2 down below, and you can catch up with those. They're only going to be live until the end of the year, so you have plenty of time. I'm sure, I'm sure during Christmas, during the holidays, you're going to be like, oh, I'm totally going to tap into this training. But do take time to go over them if you're interested. So I wanted to start today with some questions that I received from the back of last time's training and the one before. So I thought it would be a great idea to dive straight into that, and then we'll kind of look at something else in human design and tie off this training today. And if you've been to the last 2 trainings, you'll know these are around half an hour, just to give you an idea of the length of time, not super long. So you have lots of time later on. I don't know where I was going with that. Anyway, so the question, well, it's a couple of questions. And so I'm actually looking at my Google Doc here. So if I'm looking up in this corner, that's why. Okay, so a few questions in general. As more than 70% is a generator, I'm presuming this person meant by the population is more than 70% generator type. So a blend of generators and manifesting generators, around 76 to 78% of the population. So yeah, as more than 70% of the population is a generator waiting to respond, who is asking then? I mean, it's not this literary, but projectors have to wait for an invitation. Can only manifestors initiate new things and ask? The thing is, when we think about initiation, we've been conditioned to believe that we should all initiate, right? There's even that advert by Nike, or Nike, however you pronounce it, of just do it, right? And that's been societal's conditioning around us just starting things, just doing things, initiating things, and just going for it. And the thing is, you can use evidence from your past about where you've initiated something and perhaps it hasn't gone so well for you. That always helps in terms of being all right, that's the reason why we don't initiate things. And who is asking then? The thing is, you could even use the response as a question to ask. You know what I mean? A response doesn't have to be someone saying something to you or asking you something and then you respond to it, right? There's so many different ways of responding to things, as like you say here, where someone asks you a question, you respond to it. There's also an idea that you have from some information that you're responding to, right? For example, if you're a business owner, and because I really predominantly work with business owners, I'm using this example. If you're going to write content, for example, you want to write an email or a post about your services or anything really in your business, you want to write some content. What I always say for generators is respond, right? So maybe you've seen something in your industry and it's made you feel a particular way, or then you have an idea about that or something around that, and then you respond by writing a post. Here's what I think about the human design community, right? That's a response from information that you've seen out there in the universe, right? Or maybe someone said something to you, that's a response, right? So you're always naturally responding. Who is asking then? Well, you can ask, that's also a response. For example, someone says, hey, do you want to go for dinner tomorrow night? You can say, where are you thinking of going, and what time are you thinking of going? You can still ask, right? And the thing is, the response is not limited to anything. It doesn't mean that you're sitting and waiting. If we could get rid of the waiting, I talked about this before, that would be great. Like, you're always responding, and especially as a generator, it's seamless. The universe is always giving you things to respond to, and you can ask, right? I think asking and initiating are different. Initiation is that you think something in your head. Remember, the response is external, right? You think something in your head and you go, bing, this is a great idea. I'm going to go and do it. And then you set it up and you do it. That's initiation, right? Asking is completely different. For example, you might see in your industry that maybe something is not working so well. And then you can ask your audience even and say, do you agree that blah, 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 blah? And this is one of the reasons that I always recommend market research for generators, because you're collating a response all the time, right? From the information that you're getting, but you're asking questions essentially to potential clients, past clients, your audience, right? So who is asking? It's almost like, not to go down like a really long path with this, like I want to say, like, asking what? And you can ask for sure. You can ask, absolutely, right? You can ask for what you want if you wanted, if it's a response, right? Imagine that you saw something out there in the world. This is very abstract. You saw a billboard of this trip to Mexico. You can go into your estate agents, because your response is, ooh, your sacral maybe, or you've gone through your emotional life. Ooh, I'd love to go to Mexico. That's your response when you see this beautiful picture of Mexico. And you go into the travel agent and you say to the travel agent, you ask, do you have any availability for a trip to Mexico? Right? That's a response, right? So it may look like at the end of it as initiation because you're asking, but the whole thing started as a response through your sacral or whatever your authority is to that visual you saw about Mexico. Special offer, trip to Mexico, whatever it is, right? Do you get what I'm saying? So you can let me know. I totally understand that the response is difficult for generators. It's difficult to fathom. And I've talked a lot about this with my clients, what's a response, what isn't a response. And what I would always say to you with the response, anything can be a response, but it needs to be external. And that means that you didn't just self-create this thing in your mind. There's one example I like to use, actually from Karen Curry Parker, who I did my human design training through her. Is that the generator decided to set up this workshop, and they spent money on flyers. They booked a place to do it and paid for that, because in their head this would be so amazing. Everyone would love to come to this workshop, and then advertised it and nobody turned up to the workshop. That's an initiation or a response that's internal, right? Whereas a response, a true response, is something that's external. For example, someone says to you, oh, I wish there was like some workshops about baking cupcakes like in this area, or I never see workshops about baking cupcakes. Your response is like, ooh, again, you're going through your authority. I'm using a sacral response here as example. And you're going, oh, I love cupcakes and I'm really good at teaching people how to bake cupcakes. Why don't I set up a workshop? And you can see where this is going, and people attend the workshop. That's a response from something external, because someone said something that made you think, I can do that, right? I hope that explains it. I know it can be difficult, and I say I know, I mean, I'm not a generator, but in terms of like what I know to be true of what I've learned through clients and what I've also learned in my training, there's a lot about the response, and there's a lot about the invitation as well, which maybe we'll talk about another time. I don't know. Projectors have to wait for an invitation, can only manifestors initiate new things and ask. Again, I would like scoot that ask away, and manifestors can initiate. Manifestors can have that idea internally and go, oh, I'm going to do that. And you'll see the manifestors are quite fast. They have an idea, and then they go out and do it. And I have friends who are manifestors, who are coaches, and all of a sudden they have this idea, and like 2 hours later, there's a whole new program set up, right? They didn't ask their audience, they didn't do any market research, there was no responding happening there, didn't wait for an invitation, they just went, ooh, that would be such a great idea. And remember, manifest is a very small percentage of the population, you know, like 7-8%. Yes, they're the only ones who can initiate internally, if we want to go into that. The other thing here is I do understand that it's more about recognition to respond. But if you're in a group at work with generators, this is kind of still talking about response. But if you're in a group at work with generators, this is possible as most people are generators, then one must initiate something. No, because someone is always responding. You know what I mean? Is that right? The person, we have to also remember that not everybody knows about human design. So generators could be initiating things without understanding anything about human design, but that doesn't mean that it's going to be successful. Anyone can initiate anything. We've got to remember that human design is here, your chart is here, your type you have, your profile and everything, profile is how about you use your energy, can't speak, your energy more efficiently, right? And how you then move into like success for a projector, satisfaction for a generator, for example, is by using your body graph, your chart, right? It was given to you for a reason. That doesn't mean that you'll never, ever initiate ever again. It doesn't mean that you'll always wait for the invitation, because we do things where we're human beings, we're not our chart. We're not walking around as our chart, right? We've got societal conditioning, we've got conditioning from our parents, we've picked up stuff along the way. We've also had a learned experience the entire life that we've had, and up until we learn about human design, right? So people are initiating things all the time. It doesn't mean that it's going to be successful, for example. It doesn't mean that it's going to lead them to satisfaction. It's just conditioning, right? So what I would say to that, if you were in a group at work with generators, this is possible as most people are generators, yes, then one must initiate something. Is that right? I would say one might initiate something because they're in their not self, or they don't know anything about human design, which is likely, right? There's not that many people who know about human design, and then the people that do know about human design are often not living it. You know, it's just a concept in their head. So I would say that's correct. Someone might initiate something or must initiate something, yeah, potentially, but ideally we want somebody to respond, and you can start something using a response, right? By experience or things that you're seeing in the universe, in the world, or someone said something. That's the thing with responding, it's seamless, it's always coming. It's like me looking out this window right now and going, wow, that's such a beautiful tree outside. Ooh, I would like that tree. My sacral is like, I'm a projector, so this is not going to happen. My sacral is like, yeah, what a beautiful tree. Ooh, I love that tree. And then my response might be asking someone, what's the name of that tree, right? You know, that tree is not inside my head. I didn't create that tree, right? It's external. Do you get what I mean? So I understand that this is not black and white, but well, how do you see this? There we go. That's how I see this. So that was like a couple of questions in one. And I hope if there's any generators watching this that you have found a little bit, let me come back onto here so I'm not staring at a Google Doc. I hope you found a little bit of clarity around that. I think the thing is with human design and with your response, and whatever your authority is, whatever your strategy is, it's always a learning experience, you know, and that's why we really want to like live it, you know, and see what things feel like. And we collect evidence, right? I did this thing when I first started living my design, which was I don't know, about 2 years ago, something like that. I did a little collecting of evidence of where things I had been invited into and like what happened with that, and where I hadn't been invited into things and what had happened with that. I looked at things in my business, like programs, things like that, things that maybe I'd worked with somebody else. I looked at past jobs. I looked at places that I'd lived. And I looked at all that and looked at the invitation or non-invitation and me initiating it and what worked well and what didn't. And that gives you the evidence and the proof to help you to start to understand, oh, now I see what happened. Because, you know, the thing is with projectors, you're really looking for recognition, and you really need to have invitations, like big invitations for the major things in your life, like you changing career, or you moving to a different place, or somebody getting into a relationship with somebody, right? Especially those three, you really want to be recognized and have an actual invitation for those. Like, do you want to come to? This happened to me twice this year. One was my brother invited me. Like, he's not putting out a little invitation. Remember that? Oh God, I mean, this might be showing my age, when we were like kids and you would get a little birthday invitation. Please come to my birthday, blah, 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 and you were given it at school. I love that. I mean, perfect for projectors. But he asked me, hey, why don't you stay here instead of going to Thailand? And you can stay in my other house, because he has a house which is rented out to somebody else. And we can like do it up together, and maybe we can do this like rent to buy thing. And that was for me was an invitation, because not only that, my brother was like, I really want you to stay. I don't want you to go to Thailand. Like, we want you to stay here. You know, you're part of the family, etc. Right. So that was a whole invitation, recognition and an invitation. Had I have decided to do that, I'm pretty sure it would have gone well. And look, invitations don't run out. I'm here talking about invitations now. Sorry, we've kind of segued into this. Invitations don't run out, you know, they stay open. The only time invitations start to dissipate is when your energy around it dissipates. For example, you start to feel you've gone through your authority and you're like, that doesn't mean the invitation closes. Just your energy has changed around the invitation. Another example is my mum invited me to set up a retreat center where I would teach meditation, do my life coaching, human design, and teach yoga in a retreat center. We would set it up in the loft of my mum's house. My mum has a guest house. And that was an invitation, because she was like, this would be really great and the guests would love it. Now, there is a little bit of a thing here, because I'm not sure that she was recognizing my talents. I think it was more that it would be good for business. So I said no to that, right? You get a choice in anything, but things like moving and things like relationships and career for projectors, you really want to get like recognition and an invitation there. And what I would say for any type is take a moment to sit down with a piece of paper and a pen and look back at things that have gone well. Did you respond to it? Was I invited? Did I initiate this? Did I inform somebody? How did that go? You know, like it is a point of self-inquiry too. Okay. So with that said, because I said this was only half an hour and I've got a feeling I'm probably almost at that point. So the first week we were talking about like, what is human design and what do you want to like start with? And we talked about being your type, you know, moving around the world and just being your type and like forgetting all the other stuff. The second thing that we started to look at in the second week was your authority and your strategy. And because this is a free training and because I'm a projector, like this is quite energetically a lot for me. Like I want to say this as well, if you have projectors in your life or you know a projector and they give you free advice, because they do, and this is not me canvassing, please do something to recognize them for that, because that's when they start to go into bitterness. Projectors love to share, projectors love to see what's going on in the world and seeing what's going on with the other types and other human beings and being like, I can help you with that. That's why projectors are here. But the thing is, and this is one thing that I try and do now, is that I wait for someone to say, hey, can you tell me your view on that, or something. I was invited into doing this free training because I had several people ask me to do some sort of free human design training. So here I am. So please, like, give recognition, be like, thank you for doing that thing. I really appreciate it. It was really great. Whatever, right? I see a lot of projectors who I know in business have a little button on their link tree that says, you know, buy me a cup of coffee, you know, because that could be like you give in some form of energetic exchange. And people who have DM me in Instagram will know that I give as much advice as I can in the realms of like it not turning into a session, you know? Anyway, what was I saying? So we talked about the different the types, and then we looked at the strategy and authority. And what I was saying there is I didn't go through every type of strategy. I didn't go through every type of authority. There's 6 different authorities for projectors alone. And then the rest, it's predominantly like your sacral or your emotional. But I didn't want to go through all of that because that would take me hours literally to go through all that. So I've tried to keep this as broad, but hopefully giving you as much guidance as you could want from a free training. So with that said, let's tie this up, and I just want to go into a chart so you're not looking at me the whole time. All right, it's my chart again. I'm obviously not going to use a client's chart, have them all down there, but we're not going to pull those up. So we've looked at your type. We've looked at your strategy and authority, and you hopefully by now you've at least tested what it means to actually live that. The next thing I'm going to say to you is like, well, one of 2 things. Your profile is super important. You notice we haven't talked about things like incarnation cross or anything like that. Your incarnation cross is important, but we really want to like live the other bits first. And one of the most prominent things that comes into human design is conditioning. And it's something that I work with my clients with a lot. And profile, right? Profile, I feel like I can't go fully into profile because there's so many profiles, like 12 profiles. And each one of them means something. And again, maybe that's something that I will do later on. Again, it would take me at least an hour to talk about the profiles. But you see, I'm a 2/4 here. I'm a hermit opportunist. I'm very much a hermit opportunist. I am very much. So you want to like start looking at your profile and what that means to you. Remember, with all of this, we're really having that self-inquiry of like, the hermit, what does that mean to me? And do I feel like I do that, you know? And then the next thing that I would look at, almost like some people look at their profile and some people go into conditioning. And if you're not looking at conditioning, you really want to start looking at conditioning, because it is one of the foundations of you starting to live your design, about having awareness of being like, is this mine or is this someone else's? Is this mine, or did society teach me to be that way? The most condition I see in people is in the head center. If you have an open head, you'll see mine is completely open. It's not defined at all. When I say it's open, it means that there is nothing, like none of these gates are activated. There's no color here at all, right? This is undefined, which means that the center is white, but I have activations here. See that, how these gates are colored in, right? So open means that there's nothing at all. And undefined means that the gates are activated, but the color, like, is still not defined, right? That's defined when it's colored in here, looking at the spleen, right? So your conditioning lies in your open or undefined centers. And to understand your conditioning and to decondition, which is a part of the process of living your human design. And Ratu, who is, I don't say founder of human design, because it was like a cell cellular thing that happened to him when he created human design, but he says it takes up to 6 years to fully decondition. And when I learned that, you know, about 2-3 years ago, I was like, what? 6 years? But then I realized that I'd already started my deconditioning process, because for the years before that, I'd already been working on, like, is this mine or somebody else's? Why do I feel this way? You know, healing work, personal development work, inner child work, shadow work, all of that is also deconditioning, right? So when I say to you, it can take like 6 years, know that you probably are, if you're in personal development, you probably already started the journey. So the deconditioning process is about you having the awareness around, okay, so all of these thoughts that I'm having, they're probably not meant to go anywhere, and they're probably not mine, and they're probably coming from external. Like, I'm walking around Bangkok, for example, yesterday, and I could have been having lots of pings or ideas, or maybe this, blah, blah. And for me, it's like, you know, I have the 1858. For me, honestly, it's quite a lot of judgmental, and it not heavy judgment. It's more like a questioning judgment of like, oh, weird, how come they do that? Oh, they shouldn't do that, because 18 to 58 and projectors also love rules, which is a bit of a pain in the ass, honestly. And when I was a kid, oh my God, I just was so upset. I couldn't break any rule. Now I couldn't break any rule, to be honest with you. But I was more like, you know, I would have been probably, it would have been commented on like, oh my God, you're so like nerdy or whatever, because I couldn't, it just wasn't possible for me to break a rule. And projectors, as I said, like rules, and projectors themselves are quite judgmental when they don't know they're a projector and they're living in their not self. But also this 1858, right? About judgment. So oftentimes my open head is causing me to walk around having lots of ideas about lots of different things. And honestly, it's exhausting, because if you have an open or undefined head center, it's a whole lot of thinking and mental chatter. It literally never stops. It never stops. What, even as somebody who is heavily meditated, it never stops, you know? And when I move around the world and go out and do things, it's even more so. Why are they doing that? How come they're doing that? That could be better. Maybe we should do it this way. I've got the idea. Maybe I should tell someone that person. But, you know, it's like constant. And that for me, oftentimes I'm just like, it's just thinking. We're just thinking. It doesn't need to go anywhere. And the biggest thing I see with the conditioning of the head center is that people use it for everything, and it cannot be trusted to make decisions. There is nothing there for you. Like, you really need to come into your body. So if you have a sacral, for example, defined, this center defined, when you're making decisions or anything like that, you need to come into your body and ask, does this feel like a yes or a no? What is the feeling that I'm having around this idea? You know, for me, it's my emotional weight. Often most of the ideas I have, I forget about them, or I'm just like, no, I'm not that bothered. You know, a couple of days later, I'm like, yeah, I'm not that bothered. So your conditioning is in the open and undefined centers. All of these mean something, right? For example, like I said, the thinking and mental chatter and ideas that probably are not for you. Then we've got the ajna, which is about inspiration, you know, and having maybe some of those ideas and thoughts have carried through to the ajna, and then you're like, ooh, this could be, and that's when generators start to initiate things, right? Which probably they shouldn't, or they shouldn't. They should respond to something external, right? Then we've got like the throat center, which is like the classic speaking your truth, but also the throat center. I have no access to my throat center, right? So it's really important for me to be recognized. And then I speak about things, but often when I join with other people, like in a client session or whatever, I gain access. I might gain some access to my throat, like someone might have something like this, and then I gain access to my throat. But the throat center is about speaking your truth, and females struggle with that a lot, you know. Where am I saying things that is not mine? All this sort of stuff. People would open Throat Center. For example, if I went into your DMs and said, hey, we've got this, I get it all the time. Hey, I've got this group like mastermind, it's free for the first week, blah, blah, blah. I think you would be perfect for it. And that person has got an open throat, I can tell straight away because I'm like, oh. So most people, I should not be doing cold selling like that, because most people don't have access to a throat center, right? And that's the repelling them. You get a sense of like, oh, you know. Then we've got the identity center, the G center, which is about direction in your life and business, but also about your identity. Like, and people who have this open, for me, for example, it's undefined. I've really struggled with this. Like, who am I? What is the direction I want to go in? What am I good at? Like, what should I, even to the point of, this used to be a theme for me when I was like teenage years, 20s. I would be around, people would dress a particular way, and then I would dress a particular way, you know, and all of that type of thing, where you take on somebody else's identity too. Then we've got the ego, the heart center, the will center, and this is about completion of things and getting stuff finished. I don't have access to that, so sometimes I don't finish things, you know, and I've made peace with that. What's really important here, if this is open and undefined, is that you don't make promises, because you don't have the access to that completion. So you could promise something and not follow through, and then everybody else is upset. Sacral, that's about life force energy, about like parenting, family, sexual energy, all of that is in your sacral. Then we've got our root center, which is a place of like stress as well. And people who have this open and undefined are susceptible to feeling pressure to get things finished. And this can cause like stress, obviously, and it can cause people to burn out. Solar plexus, I'm sure you know, this is about the emotional center. There's a lot of noise outside. So I'm kind of speeding up so I can get this finished and go and tell them to please shh. I don't know if I can pause this and still be recording. The emotional center is about like, is that my emotion or somebody else's? If this is open or undefined, you have a tendency to pick up on other people's emotions, amplify it, make it bigger, and then it feels like yours. It's not yours. And then you're like, oh my God, I'm so emotional. You know, it's somebody else's. So the question is this mine or someone else's? And honestly, that question works for every center in terms of conditioning. Is this mine or is this someone else's? Then we've got the spleen, which is all about your intuition. It's about immunity. It's about well-being. It's about health. It's also keeping you safe. So for example, if you have this defined, or anybody really has, you know, spleen access, even if it's open or undefined, everyone has access to all of these centers. It's you thinking that you might walk down this dark alley, and then you get that kind of like, I don't think that's a good idea, you know, and you go a different way. That's undefined spleen. Sorry, that's your spleen center. It's about keeping you safe as well, right? Safety. Okay, so that's a little bit about conditioning the centers. A very whistle-stop tour. I mean, maybe I need to do a program where I record everything about everything in human design and have it as an offer. But really, this feels like as much as I can give for free. I hope you've enjoyed it. Let me turn off this now. I hope you've enjoyed it. Even if you got some sort of clarity or some sort of like, oh, I didn't know that, or oh, yes, I do that, you know, let me know. Send me a comment either below this or send me an email back. And I wish you all the best on your human design journey and live in your design. Goodbye.